Hi everyone, David Aragona here with another edition of the TimeformUS Road to the Derby series, and the focus of this video is going to be a Derby prep that might not produce too many Kentucky Derby starters, but definitely the most interesting race to handicap of the three Kentucky Derby preps taking place, or I should say 50-point Kentucky Derby qualifying preps taking place this weekend, and that is the Grade 3 Gotham Stakes at Aqueduct on Saturday. This one going the one-turn mile distance, and it is a full, actually oversubscribed field of 15 runners signed on, 14 in the main body of the field, with one stuck on the also eligible list. And as the morning line maker for Naira, I had a really tough time making the morning line for this race. Hard to know where the public is going to go. It seems like the money has to be spread around quite a bit because this field does look very evenly matched on paper. I did peg the two Brad Cox trainees as the shortest prices, those being the number 13 Iron Clover and the number 11 Slip Mahoney. They are the lukewarm first two choices on my morning line at 4-1 and 5-1 respectively. But it's the kind of race where even the favorite is not going to be that short of a price. And if you have an idea on a price horse, you are probably going to get paid because that horse could easily slip through the cracks in this large field. Before we get to the main contenders, let's take a look at the TimeformUS pace projector for this race. And one of the interesting discussion points in this Gotham is just how much speed is signed on. There are many horses that want to be placed towards the front end. A lot of horses that are coming out of sprint races, trying this 1 mile distance for the first time. And that is the case for the horse that is shown on the lead on the pace projector, a short lead. That is the number 13, Iron Clover. He is that morning line favorite who will be stretching out to this 1 mile distance for the first time in his career. The same goes for the number 3, Mr. Swagger, as well as the number 14, Recruiter, the two horses that are shown alongside Iron Clover on that pace projector. So could be a tough trip for any of those that are intending to go forward to set the pace in this Gotham. And maybe some of the closers trying to come from off the pace will work out the right setups. We'll see how that all plays out on the front end. Let's also take a look at the TimeformUS finish projector. This is the TimeformUS algorithm, the power picks that you might be familiar with from the classic version of TimeformUS, just shown in a visual representation, the relationships of the horses laid out on the racetrack. The number 14 Recruiter, somewhat surprisingly, is shown as the winner of this race by the TimeformUS algorithm. He is coming in with some pretty nice speed figures, though. He is one of those that is stretching out to this 1 mile distance for the first time. Also shown towards the front is the number 8, Fort Warren, another price in this race. We'll talk about him a little bit more in just a bit, but it is the kind of race where I'm not surprised that this finish projector is picking some price horses because they do all look so evenly matched on paper. Let's go through these contenders, and we'll begin the discussion with both of those Brad Cox trainees. And the first one I'll discuss is the number 13, Iron Clover. Let's take a look at his career debut. This was at Oaklawn Park, and he was sent off at 7-1 this day. Kind of a little bit of a secret for the Brad Cox trable. Not one of these first-time starters that took a lot of money, but he showed a lot first time out, ran a very professional race, receives challenges early and late, as this horse that's challenging him to the finish line, Easy Action, was the heavy favorite in this race, and Iron Clover turns him away to win this by about a length and a half. The runbacks from that race have been strong. His Easy Action came back to win his next start, as did third place finisher Ben's Legacy, running faster speed figures, suggesting that 99 might have been conservative, and Iron Clover came back to win his next race at the fairgrounds very easily by nearly 10 lengths, going that same 6 furlong distance. Probably was facing a worse field second time out than he was on his debut, despite the fact that he met winners last time. So this horse is getting a big class test here as he moves into stakes company, though he's bred to get the added distance, being by Looking at Lucky. His dam has gotten some horses that have gone longer, though the best sibling for Iron Clover is a horse named Heaven Has My Nicky, who was a graded stakes winning sprinter on the dirt. So we'll see how far Iron Clover really wants to run. To my eye, visually, he is the kind of horse that is a little bit burly and muscled, that looks more like a sprinter miler than a classic distance type, despite being sired by Looking at Lucky. But he certainly is the kind of horse that can get the 1 mile distance. We'll just see what kind of trip he works out and how much of a price he will be in this Gotham Stakes. The other Brad Cox trainee in this field is the number 11, Slip Mahoney. Let's take a look at his last race when he broke his maiden at Aqueduct on January 21st. And he had to work pretty hard for this victory, as Krupe, who was ranging up alongside him on the outside, had built up a lot of momentum coming around the far turn. That horse was making a big run from the back of the pack, and he challenged Slip Mahoney at the quarter pole. And Slip Mahoney has to dig in pretty gamely here to fend off that rival to the finish line, winning this race by a head. The thing that you do want to note about this race is that January 21st was a day at Aqueduct where the rail really seemed to be an advantage, and Slip Mahoney, as well as that runner-up Krupe, both rode the rail for the entirety of their trip. So that might have inflated the speed figures or exaggerated their performances just a little bit. Maybe that 15-length margin between the two of them and the rest of the field is a little bit inflated. So just something to keep in mind, though the 109 TimeformUS speed figure that Slip Mahoney earned last time certainly puts him in the mix here, and he's proven going the 1 turn mile distance at Aqueduct. One caveat I would add, in addition to that track bias information, is that Krupe did come back to run in the Risen Star in his next start and put in a pretty poor effort, just kind of lost contact with that field and passed tired rivals late. So still waiting for confirmation of that last number for Slip Mahoney, but he's definitely a horse with a pedigree to do better as the distances get longer. So one that I'll be watching with some interest in this Gotham Stakes. Another horse with a victory over this 1 mile distance at Aqueduct is Lugan Knight, who's the winner of the Jerome Stakes a little bit earlier in this Aqueduct meet. And we'll take a look at the stretch run of that race. Lugan Knight got the job done here at 7-2 odds, fending off the heavy favorite on this day, Arctic Arrogance. Arctic Arrogance is a pretty good horse. He's not entered back here because he came up with a bit of a temperature this week, so unable to participate in this race. But what you do want to note about Arctic Arrogance is he's now compiled a string of second place finishes. So while Lugan Knight seemed pretty game to get the job done on this day, maybe Arctic Arrogance just has a little bit of hang in him. And so Lugan Knight ran a competitive speed figure last time. That 106 should translate pretty well here. It's just this Gotham field came up so much tougher and deeper than the Jerome did. So he might have to step up and run even better than he did last time if he's going to beat this group. But he definitely is a horse that has some versatility to him. He set the pace last time, but he has also shown proficiency to stalk the pace or sit just off the early leaders. So I think Lugan Knight is one that you can certainly build a case for in this Gotham. Let's also check out a couple of horses that are switching out of the Bob Baffert stable. One of those is the number 5, Carmel Road, and we'll take a look at his last race in the Los Alamitos Futurity when he was still in the Bob Baffert barn. Now, these horses, if they want to get Kentucky Derby qualifying points, do have to switch out of Bob Baffert's stable because Churchill Downs has stated that horses trained by Bob Baffert past the 1st of March are not eligible to receive Kentucky Derby qualifying points. So he has switched into the barn of Tim Yakteen, as most of Bob Baffert's top Derby prospects have at this point. And I thought that this horse ran okay in this race that we're looking at, the Los Alamitos Futurity. Got a great trip this day, setting a pretty moderate pace on the front end, and just could not hold off the upset winner. Practical move in the stretch. Now, while he's listed as trained by Tim Yakteen for this race, he has been training with Bob Baffert all through January and February, and even his last workout on February 20th was accomplished under Bob Baffert's saddle tack. So, I mean, he has been in Bob Baffert's barn preparing for this race. He's really running in this race under Tim Yakteen's name only. He will be in the barn for a longer time when he makes his next start, but just something to keep in mind about Carmel Road. And the same goes for the number 8, Fort Warren. The difference is Fort Warren is switching into the barn of Brittany Russell, which seems a little bit odd if he really has intentions on the Kentucky Derby. Not anything against Brittany Russell, but all of Bob Baffert's top Derby prospects have switched into the barn of Tim Yakteen, staying in California. This one was actually transferred to Brittany Russell in Maryland and actually had a workout at Laurel last week. So make of that what you will. He earned a pretty nice speed figure on debut when he won going a 6.5 furlong distance in October last year, but he was off for some time after that, just didn't seem to possess the same spark or speed when he came back off the layoff in the San Vicente last time. So I kind of wonder if this horse maybe has gone in the wrong direction since that promising debut, and perhaps the trainer switch is giving us some clues that he might be in the B string at this point among the former Bob Baffert runners. Let's also take a look at some horses that are a little bit less experienced, some runners coming out of maiden races. One of those is Mr. Swagger. Let's take a look at his race on January 28th, and this was his career debut, and he runs a pretty professional debut race. Broke alertly, was stalking a moderate pace but showed good early speed, and runs down a more experienced horse in Register who's trying to battle back towards the inside, but Mr. Swagger is able to get the better of that foe, winning this race by about 3/4 of a length in the end. Do note that the runbacks from this race have been very strong. Register, that runner-up, came back to finish first in his next start with a very strong speed figure, I think improving his TimeformUS number by about 10 points. The fourth place finisher from that race also came back to finish in a photo with Register. And then the fifth place finisher, Paros, came back to win a maiden claiming race, improving his speed figure again by about 20 points. So this has been a very strong maiden race that we saw Mr. Swagger come out of. He did get us at a slow pace that day. He'll have to deal with a much faster pace in this Gotham if they do want to go forward with him. And he's drawn an inside post position, so he probably is going to be under the gun from the rail. And I think his connections know that because they've added blinkers for this race. So I would imagine him to show a lot of early speed, but he does have the pedigree to stretch out by McLean's Music, who, though a sprinter himself, has done very well with his dirt route starters. And on the dam side, this dam has produced plenty of horses that have had success in route races, including the graded stakes-winning turf router named 5 Iron. So definitely some arrows pointing in the direction of Mr. Swagger, just has to work out a trip in this race. The number 4 is Uncorrelated, who is another debut winner, making his second start in this Gotham Stakes, and that is him, the chestnut with the big white face coming off the far turn here. And I think what you want to note about this race is at least he handled a sloppy track, and it does feel like there's a pretty high likelihood that we could have a wet track on Saturday at Aqueduct for this Gotham Stakes, with plenty of rain predicted in the New York area between Friday and Saturday. So Uncorrelated handled that kind of sloppy going in his career debut, was beating a good horse in Register, actually the same horse that Mr. Swagger beat in the replay that we just looked at for that horse. So I think Register improved after this race, where he finished second to Uncorrelated, ran much better in his subsequent starts. His speed figure of 89, not quite going to cut it here, but he goes out for a very dangerous barn. Chad Brown, Manny Franco. The fact that Chad Brown has designated this horse as his Gotham starter probably is a vote of confidence in how he's doing right now, but this son of Arrogate does really need to improve with the added distance. Another horse that is undefeated, who's raced a little bit more than the two that we just looked at, is the number 2, How Great Is Nate? 4 for 4 in his career, and we'll take a look at his most recent start in the Future Stars Stakes at Parks. This was back in the beginning of December, and not beating nearly as strong a field as what he'll be facing in this Gotham Stakes on Saturday, but I like the way that this horse finishes off his races. Every time, it seems like he's gathering strength as they come onto the wire, just crossing the finish line with far more momentum than others in his races. And he's never gone beyond the 6 furlongs in his career. And his speed figures also are a little bit on the light side. 97 top TimeformUS speed figure, certainly not going to cut it against this field. But he just gives me the vibe of a horse that will appreciate added ground. He's by Spitester, a sire that can certainly get route runners. The dam is by Tappet. So there are stamina influences in this pedigree. And he's the kind of horse that has overcome slower paces a few times. He's done that 2 and 3 back in his sprint races. And he does pass horses pretty effectively. So he is the kind of runner that, even though he hasn't come from that far back in any of his races, he could fall into the right trip here if they go backwards from the start and place him towards the tail end of the field. If this race comes back a little bit, I think that How Great Is Nate will be finishing strongly at the end of this race. Another horse coming in with a 4 for 4 career record is the number 14 Recruiter. He's the one that was shown as winning this race on the TimeformUS finish projector, and he is also stretching out to this 1 mile distance for the first time. I would say I trust the finishing ability of How Great Is Nate a little bit more than I do Recruiter, who strikes me as maybe more of a sprinting type. He's by Army Mule. We haven't yet seen progeny of Army Mule solidify their stamina foundation. So I think Recruiter comes in with a little bit more to prove. He's also drawn in that far outside number 14 post position, so has to work out a trip from there. If he's a big price in this race, I'm not going to talk anybody off of him because he certainly has competitive speed figures. I just think he still is coming in with some things to prove. And one more horse that I want to take a look at in this race is the number 7 Transect. And this horse has raced twice so far in his career. Both of those performances have been on the Tapeta surface at Turfway Park. And he's been impressive in those races, particularly in his career debut when he made a commanding run from off the pace to take the lead at the top of the stretch and win that race, going away in the end like one who would appreciate added ground, though they went the 6.5 furlong distance again in his second start. And I like the fact that he showed the versatility to display a little bit more early speed, had to work for that victory, was asked for his best in the late stages, but did put away a long shot that was challenging him and galloped out very strongly, far ahead of the field. What I find interesting is this horse, even though he's only run on the synthetic so far, has nothing but a dirt pedigree. He's by Gunrunner, who is one of the best dirt sires anywhere in the country right now, and the dam, Divine Escapade. She has produced some good dirt horses, including King of the Court, who ran some nice speed figures on the dirt, Runway Magic, who was stakes placed on the dirt, and the second generation of this family is very strong. Second Dam Madcap Escapade was a grade 1 winner on the dirt, a very talented filly sprinter. So I think Transect definitely has the pedigree to just transition to the dirt. And based on the way that he ran in his debut, I think he also has the versatility of running style that he should be able to come from off the pace in this race. And his trainer, Paulo Lobo, is never one that you want to take lightly. He can certainly spring with a price in one of these stakes races. So I think Transect is pretty interesting. And that's a good transition into my picks for this race as we throw out my picks for this Gotham. Just looking for some value, because I think you have to do that in a race that is this wide open. Transect is going to be my top pick. I pegged him at 15-1 on the morning line, and I think at anything even a little bit shorter than that, he's going to be fair value in this race because I think he does have a real license to improve with this switch to dirt. I'm also using the number 2, How Great Is Nate, who I do think will appreciate the added distance and could slip through the cracks despite that 4-for-4 career record. And then among the shorter prices, the one that I am most confident in would be the number 11, Slip Mahoney, who has proven over this 1 mile distance at Aqueduct and goes out for that dangerous Brad Cox stable. So that is a look at a wide open edition of the Gotham Stakes on Saturday at Aqueduct. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.